Morning, folks. How you doing today? It's nice to see you, the folks who like to play. Let's get the audio check here this morning and get grooving here with you folks. Today, it's February 8th, 2024. Say no more. All right. I'd like to thank you folks for tuning in wherever you may be, wherever the world brings you from. You've come to the right place. You've got fantastic taste. And I know your time is valuable, so we don't have time to waste. It's Friday morning. Thanks for getting up and getting going with me today here on the stream. If you know what I mean, it's going to be a good one. Those of you who like to crack open packs and shuffle up stacks of Magic the Gathering cards, it's not that hard to join me here on the morning show if you want to get a little fun into your collection. Learn the ropes of Magic the Gathering finance, tell some jokes, and perhaps better yet, learn a little bit of Magic the Gathering etiquette, how to play the game, and how to interact with folks to get the most fun out of your collection. Do you like tracking the prices of Magic cards? Is there enough information out there, or is there just too much gall darn information? Let me do it for you. I'm doing it each and every day here on the morning show with you folks, the fine, fantastic viewers who tune in on the weekdays. Wherever you've got Brody dragging along for the ride this morning, whether you've got me sitting next to the coffee pot or next to the water cooler, maybe you've got me duct tape to the bumper here this morning on your way to work, wherever you are, I'd like to thank you for dragging me along for the ride. It should be a good one. So let's step inside the stream. If you know what I mean this morning, we're going to warm up just a little bit like we like to do here each and every time we do the show. For all the new viewers who are tuning in today, with the trigger on the stack, don't forget to leave a comment in the chat. We'll go over the rules with you folks here briefly. To warm up, we're going to get a look at some artificially intelligent Magic cards, some AI-generated Magic cards. The AI, the artificial intelligence, bringing us some Magic the Gathering fun here. We like to look at it, check it, and see what we can see. Here's the rules for you. We'll look at some cards just to get started here, get Brody warmed up and ready to rock and roll. I've got a cool article for you folks today. But while we're looking at these AI-generated Magic cards, if a card is playable any way whatsoever, we'll pass it. We'll give it a pass. You'll hear this sound. That's the ding-in. And if the card's non-functional, if it's got junk text on it, if it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, if it's just a bunch of gobbledygook on a Magic card, it's missing some key elements. In order to be functional, we'll fail it. You'll hear this sound, the sound of the buzzing, cousin. Without further ado, let's take a look at this one. Allow War. Hey, how you doing, Mr. Murray Cooper? March 8th? I know, it's the 8th already. Wake up. January, February, March 8th. Yes. Friday's here already, Murray. Glad to have you with us. How are you doing? Let's just make sure is the audio coming in here this morning? Audio. All right. We got the Lao War of the Grind Scout. Right? It's Friday this morning. And question for you, Murray. Why did the French chef realize it was Friday? Because it creped up on him. All right. And why do Frenchmen go to McDonald's? Well, simply because it's French Friday. Look at this Magic card. Does this even work? Does this fit the bill? Perhaps it does. Wallsack. Nice to see you. Lauer, the Grind Scout, reach with a Wallsack. Watch your back and grab your Wallsack this morning. This one's a Selesnya card. It's a 4/4. Cost you 2 white and a green and 1 for this 4/4. So 4 mana for a 4/4. 4 mana 4/4 is not so bad. Would like to maybe see a bit of an upside. It's got reach, Wallsack for a green. I don't know. I tap my Wallsack. Perhaps this one says when Llanowar enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature with power less than or equal to the result. It's a bit of a head scratcher here this morning. We don't know what the wall sack mechanic is. It's got reach. It looks like it's approaching a wall of sacks, perhaps, a wall of egg sacks. Let's see here. We've got legendary insect, some mechanic on it that we don't understand. I got to fail this one. Look at the thumbs down, man. There's no way we can't accept. We reject this magic card and substitute our own. Here, let's give it a rating. No rating. All right, Mire Crusher. Crushing the stream here this morning. Storming for 1 red. The sorcery spell that says target spell or permanent becomes choice. Well, choisissez-vous bien ce matin. C'est Brody Alphonso. On discuter les cartes magiques. This one becomes choice. 1 red for a storm. And it storms as many times as you like it to do. What does storm mean? Well, you got to count the number of spells that have been played this turn. Perhaps if you're playing any cards that involve storm, it's good to keep some dice handy. And if you're planning on storming off, if you can keep the count in your head, that's fine, and that's one thing. But if you're storming off in the game of Magic the Gathering, best to keep a dice handy. Keep it in front of you. And every time a spell goes off, say you got a spell with storm, you just tick it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't lose count of your storm count this weekend. Tip of the day, get a dice handy, and it's always a pain to have to go back and say, how many spells were cast this turn? Keep track of that silently in the background when you're playing Magic the Gathering. Best way for me to do it, if your storm count matters to you, grab a dice, start counting spells, and then just tick it up slowly. It's going to give a little bit of a head scratch into those players also sitting at the table, because they're going to wonder, why is he counting the storm count? You want to bluff somebody at the table, just start counting the storm count during somebody else's turn with mana open. Start asking, just say, what's the storm count? Okay, is that 3 spells, 4 spells? And just start ticking your dice up and give them something to think about. Just like we're thinking about this magic card. It's no good. It's no good, and it should be put into the dumpster. Fair, underpowered, non-functional, junctional. All right, that's a junk texter. All right, abomination. This card is an abomination among cards, Jerry. We can't stand to have this 2/2. Let's see here. Abomination is a Simic card. It's 5 mana. It's a little expensive. Elemental Soldier. All right, well, Elemental PQRST, the discard a card to proliferate is a 2/2. So you 5 mana, get a 2/2 that discards and proliferates. It seems pretty good. So proliferate, what's that do? It adds a counter to any permanent and player of our choice. So if you've got like 5 or 6 or 7 cards in hand, you can activate this as many times as you have cards in hand. You can discard once, do it again. When you're storming off in Magic the Gathering, perhaps you're about to activate something that has an activated ability multiple times. Always consider that sometimes you want to activate those one at a time, because if you go all in and you just discard your entire hand, and then some other player decides that they're going to interact with it, there you are stuck, having have discarded entire hand or put all your mana into something when you could have done it one at a time. So usually when a card has an activated ability on it, it's better just to do it one at a time, pass around the table and say, does anybody want to respond to that? Okay, I'll do it again. So this one proliferates. You can start putting counters on anything you want. This would be quite good with poison counters. Poison counters making a comeback in the game of Magic the Gathering, especially in Commander. People playing the commanders that proliferate. Atraxa, I think, is one of them. So if you're proliferating, if you're activating abilities, say for a single mana, consider doing it just one at a time. 1 activation, see if anybody wants to do anything. 2 activations. Sometimes people will try and sneak a spell in there in between. Maybe you're doing a damage somewhere. This card, discard a card to proliferate, and then you can always activate it again right after they respond to it to kill whatever it is you're doing. This one, Robert O'Brien here. Nice to see you. This one's a pass. Nice to see you, Mr. Robert O.B. here this morning. This is an abomination to Magic cards. I think it's fine. It looks like it checks out. It passes. Let's go fair, overpowered. It's either fair or overpowered. I think discarding a card to proliferate could be OP. There's plenty of ways to abuse this. 46.6% of people also agree. Et aussi, vous voulez encore une fois cette carte magique magnifique encore. Cryptic Encore. This one is a white mana to cast it. Now, we looked at this one. This is where we left off yesterday. This one is like a bolt with an upside. A lot of people said this card was overpowered, but I don't think it is. I think it's just fine. It's the wrong color. It breaks the color pie. Now we have Lightning Bolt in white. The Lightning Bolt. One white. Cryptic Encore deals 3 damage to any target. Manifest the top card of your library. That's it. That's all. That's all you get. I think it's fine. It does work. Doing some damage. Got a little bit of a Phoenix here this morning. Feeling frisky and frying on a Friday with a Phoenix. It's good. And what do taxidermists do on a Friday night? Nah, just the usual stuff. That's right. This card, doing some usual stuff here, doing 3 damage and manifesting the top cards. A lot of people say this is overpowered, sort of where we left off yesterday. Feels good to get in the stream here this morning. It's Friday. I want to thank all of you folks for tuning in and joining me from around the world. It's going to be a great show today. I've got some interesting articles, and usually on Friday, that's when we do the weekly recap to see what the most telling and the most movingest and the most groovingest cards in the game are. Do you ever wonder sometimes when you look at some of these card prices and you see a card on a list that's going up in price and you say, why is that card moving up in price? I don't even understand what makes it good. It looks bad even. Well, we'll try and get into some of that discussion because part of Magic Finance is being able to spot the hidden gems that nobody cares about, perhaps in a new set. I mean, even the Breakout card is an example of that, a card that people just passed over, didn't really understand how good it could be until somebody finally brings it to a tournament in a new deck and cracks that card wide open, and now it becomes quite good and quite playable. The Vein Ripper is a good example of that. So when we look at some of these Magic cards and we look at the prices and we try and understand why they are so high, sometimes it's a little overwhelming if you think, I'm going to spend 40 or 50 bucks on a Magic card, get that into my collection, or even 100 or more. But then you still need to play test with the card to see how all the interactions work in your deck. So maybe some explanation on some of these cards will be helpful for folks on their finance journey. There's nothing worse than sitting down to play with a new card that you just paid money for, a lot of money perhaps, and not really understanding all the gameplay interactions that go along with it. So understanding what makes the card broken, busted, good, powerful, or quite often high in price. So you bought this brand new Lamborghini, you need to get in the driver's seat, you got to take it for a spin, but you don't know how to drive a stick shift. That ends up happening more often to me than I'd like to mention. So I usually get to sit down with some friends, do some casual games, play a couple of repetitions, and find new interactions. There's always some new interaction in my deck that I don't really expect, and it comes out of nowhere with a card that I just added in there. So it's good to play test with those cards, figure out what the interactions are. And if you need a little bit of help on your Magic the Gathering finance journey, if we're looking at some cards and you're like, Brody, why is this card so expensive? It's not obvious why it's worth so much gall darn money. Maybe you can shoot me a comment. We'll discuss it and try and get into it. Let's put some heads together because 62 heads are better than one. And the Brody is not here for himself. He wants to learn from you folks as much as you get to learn from each other. So let's get on down the road here this morning. I've got an interesting article. When I saw this one, I thought it would be very appropriate to bring to you folks this morning because we're talking Friday. We're talking Magic Finance, and we like to take a look at the market in general because we want to have an idea. What are the most expensive cards in Magic the Gathering? So there's two things. There's valuable, and then there's cost. Price and value are two different things. We're talking about Magic cards. I like to discuss the prices. We're talking about the cash prices, what it would cost you to get that card into your collection, how much money of your hard-earned working man's income or working woman's income you're going to spend on that Magic card. Now, the value is another story. Some cards are undervalued, meaning they do more than what you think they should do. They've got extra built-in opportunities. that allow you to proceed in the game and create a board state that is a little bit more powerful. So price is one thing, value is different, and sometimes the pricey cards have a lot of play value that go along with it. But today we're going to discuss what are the 10 most valuable Magic cards in the game of Magic the Gathering thus far as we sit on February 8th. 2024. So let's get into this article here. It's going to be a good one. Got some interesting visuals for you folks. What's set? Good morning, Robert O'Brien. Let's get a little sip of coffee. These are the 10 most magical value cards. Thanks for tuning in here, folks. Murray's in the house. We got Benson. All right, what are the 10 most valuable Magic the Gathering cards? Let's discuss it. As of today, this is going to give us a pretty good indication as to why some of these cards go up so high in price. We've got Mox Sapphire, Vesuvan Doppelganger, Time Walk are some of the priciest Magic cards selling for thousands, if not even millions of dollars. Copy Artifact, Lord of the Pit, Mox Jet are other highly valued cards due to their rarity and gameplay impact over the years. The most expensive Magic cards ever sold is one of a kind serialized One Ring from Lord of the Rings set bought for $2 million by Post Jabron. Now, that set a new precedent in the world of Magic the Gathering when we can take out a brand new set and put a new card in it, and it can go for more than any other Magic card has gone for in history. And that's sort of a trend that we're starting to see in the world of Magic the Gathering with fancy promos, even Ragavans that are printed for just for tournament play, maybe some special edition Shivan Dragons, and the serialized Magic cards that are now making a swarm in the financial markets. People are pricing those cards upwards of thousands of dollars fresh off the presses. It's hard to believe. Sometimes you think that you got to have a combination of nostalgia, play power, and rarity all together. But I think now with the way that the game has shifted, especially in game design, they want to start printing cards hot off the press that command a huge sticker price. Myself, I'm not falling for it. I like my old Magic cards. I like to see the value right in front of me. It's a tough market out there, but there are a few things that you can count on to be sound investments. Property, art, and gold all come to mind, but for the geeky millionaire looking for an investment in both harkens back to the childhood memories and has proven track record of appreciating in value since 1993, nothing beats Magic the Gathering cards. While more recent Magic cards can measure their market value in the mere hundreds of dollars, these painted cardboard rectangles can boast prices in the thousands, hundreds of thousands, and even millions of dollars. We're going to read on to discuss the most expensive Magic cards in the game, and this is a card article brought to us by Steve Sean Murray as of 2024. All right, so coming in at number 10 on our list here, Mox Sapphire. This is the blue Moxen. Now, when you're looking at the Moxen and old reserve list cards, the Mox Sapphire is generally the best one. People say it's the best one because it makes blue mana, and blue mana is hard to find. It is. Blue mana is hard to find. Just like happiness. It's hard to find. But you can make it. Mox Sapphire, $46,800 for the Alpha Edition. Okay, back in Magic's earliest iteration, there was a group of cards known as the Power 9, and these 9 cards included cards we see later on in this list, including Time Walk, Time Twister, and the infamous Black Lotus. Five of those 9 were simple artifacts that merely provided one additional mana, and Sapphire doesn't do anything more than provide a single blue. But in fact, you could play as many of these artifacts as you wish on the first turn, and it was which meant it was theoretically possible to have far more mana than your opponent if you received a lucky draw. That's why the Sapphire, along with the other 4 Moxen, are restricted in vintage formats and have received very few reprints since the game's initial debut, only being reprinted twice, once in beta and then again in unlimited. So the Mox Sapphire coming in as one of the most expensive Magic cards here today. And this one here surprised me to see it on the list. The Vesuvan Doppelganger. Man, we loved this card when it was introduced. Limited edition Alpha We're talking to the old stuff, Alpha Edition cards. The Vesuvian Doppelganger's got some awesome art on there by Quentin Hoover. This card was the first of its kind in the game. I guess there was also Clone, but this one was a little bit better. It cost you 2 blue and 3. And then when it come into play, you get to make a copy of something on the battlefield. And then during each of your turns, you could actually change the copy. So a true doppelganger ganging up on us in the stream here. This morning, Dual Brain. We're talking about the 10 most expensive cards in Magic the Gathering. And coming in at number 9 is the Vesuvian Doppelganger in Alpha Edition. $63,000 for this card. The one thing better than a Shivan Dragon was 2 Shivan Dragons. That's right. You could have just had one more than one in your deck, or you could splash some blue mana and cast Vesuvian Doppelganger. This creature came into play as an exact copy of another target creature, except it remained a blue permanent, and it can continue copying creatures, gaining their power or toughness and their abilities each and every turn. Doppelganger was more of a fun multiplayer card than anything else, but fond memories and thick wallets create a surprisingly high price when mint condition cards appear at auction. These are generally based on auction prices, so places like Heritage Auction, Magic the Gathering auction sites, perhaps on eBay. When some of these limited edition cards sell and break records for previously sold versions of the same card or even other cards in Alpha, people pay attention. So the Time Walk coming in at number 8. Nice to see here. This is a very fantastic card. This was the original Take an Extra Turn card. There's no downside to it, too. And it's got some crazy art on it by Amy Weber, so we like that. This card, $63,000 for the limited edition Alpha, based on previous sales. And there's a reason why this is banned in almost every format. Being able to take an extra turn over your opponent is a massive advantage that often cannot be overcome. Unfortunately, there's some other cards out there like Explore, which basically says you may put an extra land card onto the battlefield and you draw a card sometimes as early in the game as turn 2 or turn 1. Time Walk is nothing more than draw a card and put an extra land onto the battlefield. So there's a very good case for cards like Explore that have the same mana cost, that draw a card, put an extra land on the battlefield. If you've ever played turns with Time Warp where you're playing 5 mana, but you don't have anything on board to actually do during that extra turn, sometimes it can be a little bit lackluster taking that extra turn where all you get to do is draw an extra card and play an extra land. Maybe that's enough to get you ahead of your opponent, but it's best played and best spelled when you have a decent enough board state to either take an extra attack turn or draw a few extra cards. The Time Walk has got a lot of upside. It's being able to take extra turns from merely 2 mana is so widely overpowerful that along with Chaos Orb and a few others, Time Walk become one of Magic's earliest banned cards. You can still cast Time Walk, but in Vintage only, and its availability to play in few tournaments isn't what really makes this card so special. People really remember Time Walk's awesome power, and that power commands a high price at auction even decades later. Okay, here's a card that's one of my favorites. As we discussed the most expensive cards in Magic the Gathering, we couldn't discuss that without this limited edition Alpha Time Twister. Morning, TCG dude. Don't spill the coffee on the cardboard now. No. You know, another good thing when we're talking about playing and etiquette, no drinks on the table. That's an etiquette rule of mine. If you're ever going to a Magic the Gathering tournament, or even just a casual play, I usually put my drinks on the side table or even put them on the ground or on the floor next to where I'm playing. As a rule, I don't generally put drinks on the table. It's happened to me a couple of times in my own setting where I'm just sorting cards. If I put a drink on the table, and even at work when you're doing some serious paperwork, you knock over a cup or coffee and it spills all over your paperwork. You really want to make sure you're double sleeved up. So, you know, as a form of Magic the Gathering etiquette, don't even put a drink on the table. Put it on the side or put it on the ground next to where you're playing. Because if you bring out some cards like this, it can really cost you if they get wet. Time Twister. This card, what are we costing? What's it cost for this one? $84,000. Now, this card's unique in the fact that it's one of the only Power 9 cards. I think it is the only Power 9 that can be played in Commander. And it's kind of a interesting case because the wording on it is much like a lot of the other wheel effects, like Wheel of Fortune or Wheel and Deal or Days Undoing and Wheel of Fortune. Yes. Days Undoing, Wheels of Fortune, and Windfall. But this one is unique because everybody gets a shuffle ability from their graveyard back into their deck. So this could be especially good in multiplayer formats when people are trying to recur stuff from the graveyard. You set this aside in a new graveyard pile, and then you shuffle your hand, graveyard, and library together and draw 7 new cards, leaving all cards in play where they are. All opponents must do the same. So this is the one card on the Power 9 list that's playable in Commander. And proudly to say I'm very happy. Years ago, when I was just getting into Commander, I realized that this is the only card in the Power 9 that can be played in Commander, and as such, it's commanding a huge price, and I would not be surprised to see if this card outpaced other cards in the Power 9 just due to the fact that it is playable in Commander. The draw 7 cards effect is very powerful. It does not require you to end your turn right after you do draw 7 cards, so you can keep putting permanents onto the battlefield. You can play your mana rocks, and you can play any number of spells after it. Reloading your hand can be quite good, and there's plenty of ways to combo this with cards that only let opponents draw just 1 card a turn. Perhaps a card like Narset, the Parter of Veils. It's a popular combo with Time Twister. And even in a deck that runs Orcish Bowmasters, every time somebody draws an extra card other than the first one for their turn, they get to take a damage and you get to amass some orcs. So with cards getting printed in today's newer sets, this card just keeps getting better and better, and which is why it's seen as the number 7 on the list of the very most expensive cards in the game of Magic the Gathering, commanding $84,000 from the alpha set, and the only thing bigger than taking an extra turn is getting a new hand. 7 cards is quite powerful. Time Twister provides both you and your opponents a fresh 7 cards in hand and a fresh library. It reshuffles your graveyard if you're getting low, or if you've got a spell in your graveyard that you need to loop and play again, the Time Twister can do that for you. With only Time Twister remaining in the graveyard, this card has the linchpin of many combo strategies, but it was eventually banned in Legacy and restricted in the Vintage format. However, you can still play Time Twister in the most popular casual format, which is Commander, which we just finished discussing. The rarity, the power level, and the demand from even current players have pushed Time Twister's price into the stratosphere, making early edition cards still in good mint condition expensive as luxury cars. Now, let's consider this. The collector's edition is still a playable version in Commander, and the price on that is not too bad. I would say for you folks watching at home, if you have means and you're ever deciding to do a buy list, trade in, the collector's edition Time Twister is a great place to get some fun into your collection for years to come, and it's not too pricey. 6 on the list, the beta edition copy artifact. What's this one cost? $100,000.77, right? All right, good morning. We're talking about the most expensive cards as sold at auction. This is number 6 on the list, the copy artifact, and there's even a case for this card in Revised to make markets move, and people want to get this card. With the printing of the One Ring, this card's gotten even better as time goes on, and as the more and more powerful artifacts get printed in the game of Magic the Gathering, this card seems great. I was struggling because I didn't have a copy of the One Ring for quite some time. I just got one a couple of months ago, but with a card like Copy Artifact, you can put that in your deck, and if your opponent happens to play one of the biggest, baddest, best new artifacts in the game of Magic the Gathering that's really expensive, you can have one too. So Copy Artifact allows you to copy an artifact in play. It still counts as an enchantment that's blue, but the point is for 2 mana, you can copy your opponent's One Ring, and you're actually a little bit ahead. You're actually 2 mana ahead. So there are a lot of potential artifacts in Magic the Gathering, and Copy Artifact lets you copy any of them for just 2 mana. That's a powerful way to ramp up your mana base with some mana-producing artifacts, and you could just have 2 Darksteel Colossus bouncing around. And like many cards on the list, Copy Artifact was never banned, and it's never, ever been reprinted since Revised. So, in fact, you can find 2 copies from Revised Edition for as little as $20, but at one point, you had to shell out 6 figures to get a mint condition Copy Artifact from Magic the Gathering's Alpha printings. Here's a card I'm excited to see. All right. I'm excited to see the Lord of the Pit, and I was surprised not to see the Zombie Master on this list because there's some funny cards that tend to pop up and be very expensive. The Lord of the Pit coming in at number 5 on this list of the most expensive Magic Gathering cards of all times. $105,000 for the alpha printing. Now we're probably talking about graded cards in this instance. We're talking probably about cards that are, PSA 95 or PSA 10, mint condition, perfect condition. This card's iconic because Mark Teden, the man who illustrated the very first 5/5, the very first 10/10, and the very first 15/15 in the game, also illustrated this card. And there's even a commander out there that works well with the Lord of the Pit. It's I can't remember the name of it, but it'll come to me here shortly. A little bit unprepared with this one, but there's a commander out there that says give control of target creature to an opponent. It's goaded. It gets a +1/+1 counter, and it can't attack you. So there's new ways to abuse the Pit Lord. It also says during your upkeep, you have to sacrifice a creature to it. So if you give this away to your opponent and it gets a 1/1 counter and it becomes goaded, then they can't attack you, and they still have to feed it. It can't be sacrificed to itself. It's a 7/7. It flies, and it's got trample, and the art on it is just iconic. It was believed to be graded at a 9.5, costing $105,000. For a very long time, the Pit Lord was considered a great card, and having to sacrifice a creature every turn just to keep the 7/7 flying trample demon from hurting you seemed too steep a price. We tried to get around it with cards like Breeding Pit and token decks that created surf tokens, maybe the Sanger Autocrat and anything else that created a 0/1 to feed to the Lord of the Pit. But Magic's evolved, and now there are some extra creatures out there that are all too happy to be sacrificed to the dear Lord of the Pit. Having a sacrifice outlet can be quite good in Magic the Gathering, and there's some upside to having to bin your own creatures. There's still better cards out there, but the Dangerous Demon was a sign of things to come in Magic Future, and perhaps that's why a mint condition copy of the Pit Lord sold for over $100,000 in 2023. A curious decision, considering you can get copies for later editions for as little as 10 cents. A card that's been reprinted plenty of times. The Alpha Edition cards as collectors always tend to hold value. And we're trickling down the list of the most expensive cards of the Mox Jet. Mox Jet, I'm very surprised to see is more expensive than the Sapphire. Black has always been kind of controversial and rubbing elbows with the Mox Ruby, jockeying for the next best position as far as the Moxen go, and that tends to change depending on how formats go. The Mox Jet coming in at number 4 for $108,000 for the Alpha Edition. All right, another Mox that recently made it to Magic's top 10 priciest cards is nothing inherently superior to Mox Jet over Mox Sapphire. It simply provides black mana as opposed to blue. There's a good argument to be made that the blue mana is better because you can use it to cast counter spells. But the black mana that's received a new import in Magic's Vintage format with the release of Tales of Middle-earth, and perhaps the most disruptive card in Vintage has seen is Orcish Bowmasters. So when a new black card gets printed, especially like the Bowmasters, and it goes straight to Vintage, when we're looking at the prices of Magic cards and we're speculating on cards that could go higher later on in the days of Magic the Gathering, you always have to consider, this card is good right now or is going to be good into the future. So a card like Bowmasters that goes straight to Vintage or straight to Legacy makes the black mana even more desirable. With the printing of Bowmasters, it gives a new archetype to the entire world of Magic the Gathering that requires black mana, and Jet would seem of greater importance simply because the Mox Ruby makes red and people want to play a black card. So perhaps to the point where someone felt it'd be a good investment to pay over $100,000 for one, although it seems doubtful that this particular Mox Jet will ever be removed from its protective case. That's what they spent. And the number 3 on the list here, coming at $208,000 for this Mind Twist of the Alpha Edition. This card was a backbreaking card. This card was actually on a deck list early in the game of Magic the Gathering, I think in the 90s, in a black rack control deck. Black being the original control deck, despite what anybody who plays blue would think. Black was the original control deck, using discard mechanics to control your opponent and cripple them from playing spells, combined with cards like the Black Vice or the Rack. When you had less than 4 cards in your hand, you took damage. Hymn to Torak and a few other discard cards like Hypnotic Spectre made the Mind Twist an easy include in rack control decks where This card costs you a black and X and opponent. One opponent must discard X cards at random from their hand. So if you could pay enough mana into this, what your opponent's got cards in hand, this will just basically do the opposite of the Time Twister, where they get to draw 7. Well, this can make them discard up to X. A version of this card sold for $208,000 just back in last year in auction. Few cards more brutal than the Mind Twist. There's no greater feeling of helplessness in Magic the Gathering without having cards in hand, and the Mind Twist can put an opponent who's ahead on board into a crippled position, and being able to make your opponents discard a full hand in just 8 mana. It's very powerful. That's why Mind Twist is banned in Legacy, and you can still play it in Vintage and Commander. But once again, you can get a cheap version of this card from later sets for only a few dollars if you want to try playing with it. It's not expensive, preventatively expensive. It's been reprinted plenty of times. But according to the Goldfish, the alpha printing of the Mind Twist went for over $200,000 back in the day. And the Black Lotus. I don't know why we've got a picture of the 30th anniversary edition here, but it's not the one that's the most expensive. Second most expensive card in the game of Magic the Gathering, Black Lotus. This was quite easily the most powerful 0-mana artifact in the game, and it's been rated as the best card in the game of Magic the Gathering simply because it makes you so much free mana. It can be looped from the graveyard if you can play stuff like Underworld Breach and Yawgmoth's Will. There's plenty of cards allowing us to play from the graveyard, which costs 0 mana, so you can net a bunch of mana. There's even interactions with Auric Salvagers, the Bomberman deck, where you can return artifacts from the graveyard to the battlefield. This is an interesting card, $800,000, and for the longest time, this was the centerpiece of Magic the Gathering as the most expensive card in the game for good reason. And now it's coming in at number 2, thanks to new printings. All right, most people think of the ludicrously expensive Magic cards that most often think of the Black Lotus. The 0-mana artifact's been terrorizing Magic auctions for the past 30 years, and its power to enable completely broken early game strategies is renowned. It's been banned in every format except Vintage. It has been reprinted, but once for Magic's 30th anniversary. Black Lotuses do have have been routinely selling at auction for hundreds of thousands of dollars. However, the highest price for an Alpha Edition Black Lotus was $800,000 paid by renowned Magic player Post Jabron back in 2022. But even that isn't the highest price paid for a Magic card. Now we've got coming into the One Ring. This is the most expensive card in the game. It just set a new precedent last year. We're selling this card for upwards of, what was it, $2 million? Morning, Dustin Colorhall. Nice to see you here, buddy. TCG Dude, Black Lotus is sadly trumped by the One Ring. Technically, on a value basis, it could be argued, but it will always be the most iconic card. In fact, Open Booster sold his BGS beta for $1 million, I believe. Private sale. So we're talking most expensive cards in Magic the Gathering. The serialized One Ring. Now, there's only one of these. So this constructed scarcity that Wizards of the Coast is starting to bring into the game of Magic the Gathering with serialized cards and just one of the One Ring. There's plenty of other copies of out there, but there is only one version of this card. What do you folks think? Is $2 million for the One Ring? There was a lot of temptation and a lot of discussion in the world where people were saying, if I open the One Ring, I'm going to destroy it. And I'm really sad that didn't happen. I was really looking forward to somebody destroying the One Ring and actually fulfilling the real life fantasy of the Lord of the Rings lore and just destroy the One Ring before it gets out there in circulation. But now we've got somebody who's willing to pay $2 million for it, probably locked it away safely and never see the light of day. Earlier this year, the Wizards of the Coast announced something special for the Lord of the Rings crossover set, Tales of Middle-earth, and one very special booster pack would be one of one serialized One Ring, and there would be other One Rings and other boosters, but the One Ring would have a unique art and an elvish text in the serialized 001 of 001. After a week, the card's been found and would be sold. Another month later, again, the buyer was paying 2 million piastres, 2 million de piastres, $2 million for the One Ring in a heavy protected case. It graded a 9. I think it graded a 9 or a 9.5. I don't think it got a perfect 10, but it's a life-changing amount of money for Brooke Traffin, who sold the card received the rarest and most expensive Magic card ever printed. Even he could have bought a few houses for what he paid for it. So you could just let your saga continue and be the one who destroys the One Ring, or you could sell it and get the $2 million. Good question. What would you folks do? Would you sell it for the $2 million, or would you destroy it? Is there any purist in the chat who would cut this thing up or burn it on camera just to do the thing, just to throw this sucker into Mount, take it to Hawaii and throw it into a volcano, right? So the most expensive cards in Magic the Gathering, it's not the cards you would think, and there's a few on that list that make me scratch my head and say, holy smokes, Lord of the Pit finding its way onto the list. We've also got Copy Artifact finding its way onto the list, and seeing the value of these cards is not hard when you consider how rare there are, but there are some more widely available versions of each of these cards. Some of them have been reprinted. Unfortunately, we're not going to see another copy of the One Ring, one of one, yet. All right. You hear that? What's that sound? It's time to start moving and grooving here in the stream. We got your movers and the shakers for Friday, March 8th. Nice to see you folks here in the stream. Let's get rolling. All right, what's the worst sound on a Friday? That'd be the alarm clock. And where can you have Friday every day? In Greece. Let's take a look at your movers and your shakers here this morning. The all list. We're going to have a recap on Monday of all the cards that moved throughout the week, the most movingest and groovingest cards in the game of Magic the Gathering. Let's take a look at this list together and see what we can see. I'll take the 2 million. Dustin is taking the 2 million. It's got to be more to destroy it, right? I guess you're going to do a crowd fund and say, who wants to see me destroy this? We're taking bids, right? Make them compete. Just say, hey, I got an offer for 2 million to buy it, but for 3 million, I'll destroy it. How about that? Why don't we get creative with it? You could do something fun. All right. What's a cow going to do tonight on Friday night? Probably go to the movies. And what does Friday smell like? It smells like weekend. What's a biologist wear on casual Friday to work? Jeans, of course. These are your movers and the shakers for this week here. These are the all list. This is every Magic the Gathering card and prices. We're going to have a recap on Monday of all the cards that have been moving and grooving, courtesy of the stock desk. Let's take a look at some of these cards here. We've got some of the usual suspects. We've got Mock Sapphire coming in at number 2. We got the Winter Orb up 67%, another alpha version. Brody, you're awesome. I just wanted to let you know. I couldn't do it without you. I'll tell you this. Everybody who tunes into this show, from the early days. I've been at this for a couple of years, and I'd really take the suggestions to heart, because folks like the coach, who have had my back from day one, always giving me some pointers, suggestions, things that you want to see. I take the comments seriously, and I try to put your input into the show. So a big abrazo to you, my man. Thanks a lot for sticking with me. And the growth that you see is you have yourself to thank for it. So anybody who's stuck with me all this time to bring you guys some form of Magic the Gathering morning happiness and entertainment, a little bit of fun in your collection, I got you guys to thank. Mr. Benson out there always connecting with me, giving me suggestions. The coach always having my back, and especially Mr. Ed, the dual brain, who has been unwavering in his unconditional support for the show and really keeping me going. Sometimes it really gets tough out there and you lose steam, but with the people that are so welcoming and like yourself, coach, it gives you the impetus. It gives you the steam to carry on and keep making streams. Robert O'Brien, I like having new viewers come to. I don't believe I will make the trios. I still can't fill a pioneer player. Oh, that's sad to hear. Need a pioneer player. Maybe one will come up. I think deck registration is coming up. And just like we were discussing, I'm going to be heading to trios to play with Dustin Cullihall. We've got a bit of a team put together. We've got 3 people. I'm taking the pioneer seat. I don't know how many games I'll win, but I'm hoping I'll have a little fun. So I actually got an interesting deck list I could show you folks. Actually, next week I'll show you the deck list that we're scratching our head to try and put together. Yeah, it's hard to keep up with the grind, but a little bit of inspiration, a little positivity, and you folks keep coming back every day. I'll keep doing the show as long as you folks keep tuning in. We're looking at the movers and the shakers this weekend, and the cards that are moving and shaking and baking and grooving and making the most noise on the list of Magic the Gathering here cards that play well. All right, we're trying to give you a little bit. This is a funny list. Actually, it really is, because we have the Winter Orb at the top of the list. Well, we've discussed this card a few times on what cards work well with it, right? Who's playing this? There's a card. If Hot Dice was here, he'd be giving me the boo hiss, and I'll give you a buzzer. Coach needs a few buzzing. I know Coach likes the excessive buzzing to get his motor running here this morning, but this is a card that a lot of people love to hate. And when it plays on the battlefield, it can just decimate the battlefield. Wait, which deck did we decide on? Well, I ordered some singles yesterday. I ordered a play set of Valkies. I also ordered a play set of Kroxa. I think we're going to try and play the breakout deck, Dustin. I think we're going to go for it. We're going to try and play the breakout deck. We're going to play. Now, maybe we shouldn't discuss this here on the channel because Mr. Garanjotter might be listening, but I think we're going to try the breakout deck. We're going to play Kroxa. We're going to try Valky and maybe a couple of other cards. We're not dead set on the Dreadhorde Arcanist yet, but I do like the idea of Thoughtseize coming back from the graveyard, as well as Duress and maybe Fatal Push with some hand disruption. So black control, maybe some Jund. I think we're going to play some Jund. Some. I want to try the breakout card. I think it'd be unexpected. It's making moves in other formats, so why not, right? That's where I'm sort of leaning. I did order some singles, so work with me on that one if you don't mind over the next little bit here to try and get some of that together. It means a lot. Remember me, love my excessive buzzing, of course. Here's a card that'll make people boo and hiss and just face the window. When this card comes onto the battlefield, especially in a 4-player game, it's devastating. This will put a target on your back. If you think this card is fun for other people to play against, you have to just kind of smile and grit and bear it. This will make you wildly unpopular at the table. So if you're going to play it, you better have a way to defend it. And you better have a way to close out a lock right away and shut opponents down. Because if you simply drop a Winter Orb, it's going to put a target on your back. As long as the Winter Orb's untapped, players can untap more than one land during their untapped steps. Something I like about this card is word note is this old school wording on the card. Well, let's look here. Continuous artifact. See, continuous artifact, and this is what makes this card so cool. There's another card called Howling Mine, and there's a few continuous artifacts out there. This nomenclature no longer exists in the game of Magic the Gathering. Continuous artifact, mono artifact, poly artifact. Now they're just called artifacts. But this was an interesting game choice design early in the game where it was a type of artifact that you didn't have to tap it to do anything. And it still remains true to this day. So if they're printing new versions of the Winter Orb that just say artifact on them, you have to keep in mind that these old continuous artifacts that are reprints to this day can be shut off by tapping them. So Winter Orb is like that, as well as the Howling Mine. If it becomes tapped, then all of a sudden it doesn't do the thing that it was recently doing. Ways to tap this thing. Well, the early interactions in the game used to use Icy Manipulator to tap permanents. Now we've got another card called Relic Barrier. If you want a cheap way to tap this is my favorite choice. I've probably mentioned this before, but this card here, Relic Barrier, is only $6, and it'll cost 2 mana, so you can cast it off a Soul Ring. So you can cast the Winter Orb off a Soul Ring. You can also cast the Relic Barrier off a Soul Ring. I would suggest that you would want to play the Winter Orb only when you can tap it, or unless you have a particular way to get around it. It's true, Coach. It's true. So let's also consider the fact that this card combos. I've just recently realized that the The Winter Orb combos well with the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale. This is a land that says all creatures have an upkeep of 1 or destroy this creature. So if your opponents have a lot of creatures on board and you can drop the Tabernacle and then you follow it up with a Winter Orb on the same turn, then that means that they won't have mana in their lands to pay for their upkeep and their creatures are going to die. So unless they have a lot of mana rocks out there, the Tabernacle Winter Orb combo is quite powerful. Maybe as good or better of the Relic Barrier because it's a way to remove cards, permanents, creatures from the battlefield. And in a Commander lands deck, I think for me the Winter Orb is an excellent choice with the Tabernacle as well because lands are Urza is a great way to tap it. Which Urza? Oh yeah, Urza! Holy smokes! Thank you, Dustin. Urza, Lord High Artificer. Is that the guy? Urza theme deck? Urza the Lord High. So now this is another interaction that I never sniffed out. Of course, with the Urza card. Listen to this. Legendary Human Artificer. When it enters the battlefield, you get a 0/0 construct that has power and toughness equal to each artifact you control. So it's a +1/+1 for each artifact you control. So the construct gets bigger with the Winter Orb on the battlefield, and then you can tap an untapped artifact you control to add blue. So now you can just tap the Winter Orb for mana. Ice Age has the funny art on it. It does. Everyone had an Icy Manipulator. Was they expensive? And everyone wanted them. Even when Ice Age came around, you still wanted Jester's Mask and Cap and Deflect and Icy Manipulator. It's a fact. You know, I couldn't get the Icy Manipulator. When I heard the Icy Manipulator was getting reprinted in Ice Age, I was super excited because I wanted to get a copy of it. And then it came out with some interesting new art. Hot dice, boo, hiss, right? Snakes in the stream this morning. I knew it. Tap what for mana? Tap the Winter Orb for mana. We're tapping the This is a gameplay interaction that we know you're going to love. The Winter Orb and ways to tap it. We can tap it for blue mana with the Urza Lord High Artificer. Now their Winter Orb makes blue. It gets even funner, right? Hot dice, because you know, if you want to cast some blue snakes, that this card will do it. Urza Lord High. Tap that. Tap that. Tap that. All right, Mox Sapphire, a card that we just looked at earlier on today on the most expensive. This is one of the 10 most expensive Magic cards in the game. We discussed it once already, but here we see it making moves, and it's definitely expensive. Raging River. Holy smokes. I've speculated on this card. I've got to give you guys plenty of notice. I've speculated on this card in the unlimited version, okay? And why is this card one of my top speculations? In fact, if you guys haven't tuned in, let's go to the Discord for a quick second. Let's go and check out Brody's watch list. Okay, we do have to do it. What do we got for watched cards? This stream is sponsored to you in part by our friends over at MTG Stocks Premium, gifting us a premium membership to try with you folks here for 12 months to see if you like it. If you do like it, you can help yourself. Get yourself 10% off. If you check out the description, there's a link to the Brody Alphonso Premium link in the description of the channel. You guys can help yourself and enjoy it. But if you don't want to do that, you can always join me here where we can use this functions and test it and try it for free for the next 12 months to see if you folks want to continue. Now, let's see here. We've got a couple of binders set up. And this one here, I got to put in my speculations. I do Brody's Stock Picks, Raging River. Now, this is a hilariously silly card. But I'll get to that here in a minute here. Watch cards. So I'm going to get to this. This is Brody's watch cards. And some of these cards are cards that you folks have suggested. So every time we get a good suggestion on a card that we think we're going to speculate on, it might go up in price, we'll add it to this list here. The Raging River is one of them, and I'll get to it just here in a second as to why I think this card, and it's the unlimited version that I am speculating on. I've got a couple of copies of this myself. So let's add the Raging River to the list because I just want to be completely transparent on cards that I am speculating on and have copies of. It's 200 and change. All right, why am I speculating on this card? There's a handful of cards that were not reprinted and revised. that are on the reserve list. As you can see, this card is on the reserve list, in fact. And now when we talk about revised as being such a largely printed set, and the majority of the reserve list cards from the dual lands, reprinted and revised, make up a huge market share of value and price and money in the reserve list. But you got to keep in remember, let's look back at Unlimited for a second. I wish you could short MTG cards. I picked up a Raging River International Collector's Edition for the black border. Very nice. So let me explain one thing to folks here. And if you're new to Magic, I like to discuss these nuances of the game of Magic the Gathering. So when you're tuning in to other folks who are discussing reserve list prices and MTG finance, here's what they're not telling you. There are some cards that were reprinted and revised, like the copy artifact that we saw earlier today, as one of the more sought after cards in the game of Magic the Gathering. It's also been reprinted and revised, and it's a card that you can pick up for quite cheap. The cheapest of the dual lands are available in a revised edition, as well as the Wheel of Fortune, which was reprinted and revised. But then there's a handful of cards. Actually, there's a lot of cards that were not reprinted and revised. And the ones we are most familiar with are the Power 9 cards, and a lot of those 9 most powerful cards. But then in between the stuff that was reprinted in revised and the stuff that was discontinued, there's a few cards that are little known, and this Raging River is one of them. There was printed in Unlimited, it was discontinued in print. In revised, we never got another copy of it. So I think for that matter, because this is a long forgotten Unlimited card that never saw a reprint in revised, and is not that powerful considering when you compare it to some of the Power 9. But look at the effect on this, and it creates a lot of chaos and calamity on the board, and it's really, really creates a board state that is quite difficult to deal with. So let's take a look at this. Loving the turnout this morning. It's nice to have all you folks here. I know, I'm loving it too. It makes my day even better. All right, so check out the Raging River. This is an enchantment card. I'm speculating on this. I've got the Unlimited copy. I think it's cost about, my base cost on that one is about $200. So we're going to watch this one. But I think that this card is a bit of a sleeper card, simply because we never got a reprint, like I said. It's a 2-mana enchantment, and it's in red. And I don't know what's going to happen later on in the game, but eventually there could be a way for this card to get pretty exciting. Whenever one or more creatures, there's so much word on this card that people just hated playing it. I think that's why they didn't print it again. And it caused a board state that was confusing. So that's probably another reason why they didn't print it. They said, we don't want this being part of the game. Joey B is going to fix MTG shrinkflation. I bought a Gauntlet of Might and Force Field for the same reason. There you go. Thank you, Jewel Brain. There's 2 more cards that were discontinued in revised. Gauntlet of Might, Raging River, and Force Field. There's 3 cards that aren't Power 9 that are in between. Unlimited and revised, never saw a reprint, that are quite good. Discontinued, out of print. We won't see them again, but they don't get the attention that the Power 9 and the expensive cards that are still played in other formats that they get. It doesn't get the amount of tension. Whenever one or more creatures you control attacks, each defending player divides all creatures with flying that they control into one pile, and then and a left pile and a right pile. So you got to divide their attackers, and then for each attacking creature you control, you choose left or right, and that creature can't be blocked this combat except by creatures with flying and creatures in a pile with a chosen label. So it basically makes your opponents divide their creatures into 2 piles so that you decide which side of the river. If you could imagine, that's why the lore on this card is fantastic, because you could imagine, here's the Raging River, and your opponents have to put all their creatures either on one side of the river or on the other side of the river. And then when you, as the attacker, attack, you get to decide which side of the river they're going to be attacking on. So creatures that they put on one side of the river, you can basically send your attackers. It almost gives them a pseudo menace. Like it avoids the blocking interaction, because you get to the attacker. It's a really strong advantage for the people attacking, because you get to decide which creatures are going to be able to block it, except for creatures with flying. So then it makes flying super relevant and even better if you're playing this card. If you're playing against it, you're going to need flying. This card is quite expensive. It's coming in at number 3 off the top of the list here. Let's take a look at the unlimited version. The other thing I like about this is the washed out art on this card. Like the color of this card is just a bit of nostalgia. Let's look at the chart on this. It's been flatlining for some time. There's a card I'm just licking my lips and waiting to see what's going to happen. It's taken a poke up in price once upon a time in and around, what is that? Just after Battle Bond, and then dipped down in price around Ravnica and the Master Set and War with the Spark. And then it took a tick up in price around Strixhaven, and now this card has been bottoming out quite slowly. It's not a card that's going to make your deck like super powerful, but it can create some interesting gameplay interactions against creature decks. If you want to try and have a little bit of fun, this card can definitely do it. So the Raging River is raging here on the movers, the weekly movers for all the cards moving and going up in price in the game. Wild card, I like it. Thorin and Company, nice to see you here this morning. You can justify the price of Raging River if you think about the price per word. Yes, exactly. Price per word. Here's a card that was very popular, and I think it even made it into World Championship decks at one point in time. If opponent has more than 4 cards in hand during their upkeep, Black Vice deals 1 damage to the opponent for each card excesses of 4. This is an archetype. There's a build around of this card. This used to be a card that we'd play because it's a turn 1 play. If you're on the play and you turn 1 Black Vice, it's like lightning bolt. Your opponent automatically takes 3 damage right off the hop. Jewel Brain. Gauntlet of Might is on my target list, and I'm holding for a near mint copy, and I'll pay the extra $150 for condition. So Cousin Jimmy also showing some appreciation for these out of print unlimited cards that didn't get the attention of the Power 9 or the reprinted reserve list cards on the revised list. It's kind of funny. There's an in between there. There's some reserve list cards that were printed and revised, and then there's okay, well, that's the end of the reserve list. We made the reserve list. Now revise this out. These are the cards that are getting printed. But then consider that there was one short stop in between unlimited and revised where they even removed a few more cards from print. So we got even less of them. That's why those cards end up more expensive. Black Vice, excuse moi, monsieur, $550. This was an archetype that was played a lot with land destruction. Yes, Stone Rain was playing the Black Vice as well as black and red land destruction. Sinkhole and Stone Rain, the 2 best land destruction cards in the game. Black Vice would strip your opponent's life total for not being able to cast spells from their hand. And I think this card even went into some of the World Championships decks when we were talking about 1990s and the early 90s when we're looking at some of the World Championship decks. You'd see this card in it a lot. It still rings true to this day. Black Vice with Howling Mine and Stasis was obnoxious. It was an obnoxious way to play it. Howling Mine, Stasis, yes, drawing extra cards if you can blow up your opponent's lands, or even with the Winter Orb, an interaction that Hot Dice would probably love. The Winter Orb with Black Vice can even easily do it. And now, as Black Vice enter the battlefield, choose an opponent. So now the wording on this card, see if you got this errata on it, you have to choose an opponent. So even in Commander, and unfortunately this doesn't hit all your opponents because that would make the Winter Orb even better, right? Because we love Winter Orb. This one targets an opponent. It chooses one opponent, so you don't get to hit each and every one of your Commander friends in it. If not, it would probably be busted. Puke. Brody, stop talking about that card. It's terrible. Well, let's see what other versions we can get. The Alpha Beta, of course, these are going to be for collectors. If you ever want to upgrade, you get the unlimited version for $18. And then where's the revised copy? This one's 86 cents. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to get Black Vice. Again, it's more worth mentioning that this card I love the art on this and the art series by Richard Thomas. There was a whole series of card arts with this little puppet. This little, I think it's like a voodoo doll that got its brains punched out and its guts smushed out because this is how it hurts your opponent. Let's see, the rack. We have to take a look at the rack because there was like a series of cards that had this little stuffy, poor little voodoo doll. Uh, this one's really brutal. He's getting his legs ripped apart. He's drawn and quartered here. So another version of the stuffy doll drawn by Richard Thomas. And I think there might be one more if you in this art version, in this art rendition. As soon as I take the diaper off my son's, change them, they usually sprinkle, and we go. Okay, why not? Why not? That's why I'm not ever having a son. Okay, so Black Vice, the rack. Hey, good morning, sunshine. The sun is up. The brightest part of my day. Nightmare. Oh, this card was so cool. This was like a 6-mana flying horse. Like, who didn't want to play this? It was good in mono black, and it only cost 1 black to play it. Nightmare's power toughness equal to the number of swamps you control. And I like the pun and the flavor and the play on names, right? Because Brody likes the puns. The Nightmare, of course, mare being a horse, and a nightmare being a bad dream. This one seemed to fit well, and the art on it by Melissa Benson is also really good. So this one here, power and toughness equal number of swamps you control. This one was printed plenty of times. It's got to be collectors buying these cards here in the old alpha versions and the beta versions. That's why these are showing up on the movers and the shakers here this week for the week. I would definitely got to get myself back over to Heritage Auctions to see what's picking up in the lots. Deck's using it. Massacre Girl, Known Killer. I guess in mono black when you want to get a lot of swamps out on the battlefield to keep this thing up in power. The Flying Horse definitely does some damage. Glasses of Urza. This was like the original Gitaxian probe, right? And I can't believe we actually used to play this card and think it was good. Can't deny the Beta Nightmare. It looks so sharp. You're right. This one was like the original Gitaxian probe. There were the glasses of Urza, and then there were the sunglasses of Urza. And this was a 1-mana artifact that lets you look at your opponent's hand. So you get all the information against some of your opponents. What do you folks think? Is this card even playable in Commander these days? For 1 mana, you get to look at an opponent's hand. Any player for 1 mana, it doesn't seem too bad, actually. It's legal in Commander. I mean, cards like Jit Probe seem to replace themselves and get you to draw another card. But I mean, I wonder if like this card could actually be good in Commander, because you could take a look at your opponent's hand to see if their shield's down and if they have interaction to stop you from winning the game. Maybe this card is something to be considered. I might actually Dustin Colorhall is probably going to smack me upside the head and say, Brody, it's bad. Don't play it. There's better cards. But I mean, looking at your opponent's hand, I love throwing some of these older cards in there that people go, what is that? Are you serious? For 1 mana? Yep, I'm going to take a look at all your hand. And then I'm going to just keep looking at everybody's hand to see what I'm up against. It could be actually quite good in 1v1. I don't know how it would work in Commander, but then all of a sudden you're the one player at the table who has all the information from every other player and what they've got in their hands. And then you can sort of parlay that into politics, right? Why not? Seems kind of good. Seems fun. The price on this card, moving in the Alpha Edition, don't worry, you can get plenty of cheap copies of it. The Unlimited is only $5. The revised copy, again, this was reprinted, 40 cents. If you're going to artifact heavy and an affinity, the glasses might be okay. I never thought about it. Yeah, and I like the other idea, like then you can parlay the information in the politics game. I mean, you don't have to tell anybody what they have, but you can say, oh, he's definitely going to be a threat here because, I've seen what's in their hand. Not bad. Artifact heavy meta. Perhaps this could be revisited and used for a bit of casual Commander. Mox Sapphire, of course, the blue one, showing up twice on this. And Gloom. Here's a card that I can't believe it. It's Alpha Gloom. This is great. I have a copy of this. It's an uncommon. This was a hoser card. Now, we talked about hoser cards in a video long ago, and this is what we used to call these cards, hoser cards. And in fact, we would have some play groups and some stores that would say, no hoser cards. Hoser cards are banned, as in a general rule, no hoser cards. What is a hoser card? Well, a hoser card is a card. A hoser is a Canadian term that was coined by a couple of Canadian comedians. They call the Great White North. Yes, they used to drink Molson Canadian on live TV, and they call each other the hosers. But the hoser cards are the ones that basically nerf or do something bad for one color in particular. Now, this one here, we used to play it with cards like Slate of Mind, where we could change the color text of a card in Magic the Gathering. And that's why when I see some of these AI generated Magic cards that say change the text of target card, and I wish they'd go back to that because it was quite effective. Change the number on a word text of a card, change the color of the card, change the color wording of a card. Hoser, Strange Brew. Are you tracking Power Artifact on your list, Brody? Well, let's take a look. I think so. Power Artifact. Power Artifact. Power. Elemental P. Pendulum, Mist Planes, Persist, Power Leech. Power Art. No, we're not. You want me to add it? Let's add it. Power Artifact. These are cards we're speculating on. I've also got another list for those tuning in. I've got a list of card. I've got a separate list. Now this is our artifact. Power Artifact. I've got another list here called Reprint Targets, and I renamed it yesterday because I think that's more fitting. And if you folks have any other cards that are reprint targets that you want to stay away from, if folks are like, hey, I think I want to buy this card, don't buy it. I've got another list going for reprint targets. So let's just check out. Sometimes I need a little refresh on the live stream simply because it just well, it's internet, right? Let's go watch cards. I love the mana symbols circling. Okay, Power Artifact. Power Artiface? Power Artiface and Power Artifact. Here she cometh. Antiquities. Antiquities? Antiquities? A few ways to say it. All right, it's on the list there. It's on the list there, Coach. And we've got another list going. Actually, it's a binder. We've got another binder called Reprint Targets. So these are cards that we say are overpriced and could be subject to a reprint, which would crush your value and the fun in your collection. Okay, so if you got anything that you want to add to this list, just as a shared public knowledge, and I can even share this list to folks. Urza's Pencil Jar. Is that a card? I'm going to have to look that up. So these are cards that have been identified as overpriced and could be a reprint target. If some of them I want to get, like the Dockside Extortionist, but we know we're going to see another printing of it sooner or later. The Ancient Dragons from Commander's Battle at Baldur's Gate. I got Culling the Weak from Exodus, probably see a reprint at some time. Edgar Markov, there's Guardianship. Mindbreak Trap. This is the one. This list all started with a Mindbreak Trap because I wanted to get a copy of this and I've wanted it for so long because it's a free counter spell, except the price is insane. The foil's $300 and it's like $100 for the non-foil. Urza's Pencil Jar and Urza's Binder. The Bowmaster's also on the list. Shoulder the Apocalypse. This is like $150 Canadian. Also will see a reprint at one time. We also don't know what's going to happen to the price of Shoulder once it rotates out of Standard. So that's another gamble that if you're willing to shell out the money and you don't care if the price goes down, once Shoulder rotates, it could be quite devastating to the price of that card. The Meat Hook Massacre, the One Ring, at some point we might see a reprint on that one, but now is actually a pretty good time to pick it up in a bundle. That's what Bob got me hooked on, is actually just buy the bundle and you get the One Ring if you need it. And then Wandervine Hub and some of these other Laurin lands. So these are cards that are reprint targets. And then we've also got the watch list for cards that we're watching as our picks, our speculations, cards that we might already have picked up because we think the price is going to go up. So Gloom, white spells cost 3 more to cast. Circles of Protection cost 3 more to activate. This is only good against one color deck. I mean, you could play it with Slate of Mind where you change the wording to say the color of your choice, but Gloom probably being picked up in the alpha. All these cards that we see being picked up and moving in price because of the alpha edition is mostly because collectors. Void Winnower looks like a reprint target to me. Thank you. Thank you. Let's add the Void Winnower. Okay, reprint targets. Thank you, Cousin Jimmy. Void. Is it 2 words? I think it's 2. Winnower. Void Winnower. We got the Secret Lair series, Battle for Zendikar, promo pack, and Kaldheim. It had a couple of reprints. Is this a card that we want to be watching? Let's see here. It's holy smokes, it's expensive. All right, we've added the Void Winnower. That one cost you $54 for the foil. Market price is 30, as high as $60. Let's just put it in there. I got to refamiliarize myself with a Void Winnower. Void Winnower. I don't know if I have this card. Let's take a look. Eldrazi. Oh yeah, this is the one that this card is played in the Kinnan deck. Yes, the Kinnan Bonder Prodigy deck. This is a game-winning card. This is seeing popularity in Commander. Pumpkin Spice Latte card can't ever be used? There's a Pumpkin Spice Latte card? Are you serious? Card can't even. Thanks, Dustin has a pumpkin spice latte to wake me up. Mr. Michael Superbacker, nice to see you. I'll winnow your void. So here's a card that's seeing play. How much is this card? This card's expensive. I think it's $50, and the foil version's even more. Yeah, $31.43. The Battle of Zendikar. This card's quite interesting. Now, this might be a card for Hot Dice because he likes cards that let us not cast spells, like the Winter Orb, right? So this thing is expensive. The Battle for Zendikar original foil is $100. Actually, I'm getting to the point where I'm looking at some of these Zendikar foils and I'm going, holy moly, it's a limited time bomb. So check this out. For 9 mana, your opponents can't cast spells with even mana values, and 0s at even, and opponents can't block with creatures with even mana values. So this thing is expensive for 9 mana, but it does sort of lock out the game. If you're playing anything, this is played in Kinnan, the Bonder Prodigy. I think we're going to see that here. Yes, right here. Kinnan, the Bonder Prodigy. This has been rated as one of the best decks in Commander and is playing this card. I don't want to dominate this list, but I'd rather think Vorinclex the Monster Raider looks like a reprint too. No, it's totally fine. I want more input. Vorinclex. What do you want me to say? One per customer? Only one per customer. Hit the back of the line. No. You can have as many as you want. Let's put the Vorinclex. Which one? The Monstrous Raider? Or just straight up Vorinclex? No, we want this one. Flexing and Klexing along. Thank you for that one. I'm actually very fortunate because I was over at Twiddler's Place on a game night a couple of weeks ago, and one of my packs had the Vorinclex Monstrous Raider. Now, this is a great example, and I want to bring it up with you folks here because let's take a look at this card. It's insanely powerful. It's insanely expensive. The Vorinclex, I got one. I was flexing and Klexing over at one night. I was flexing and Klexing over at Twiddler's Place, and when one of my packs I hit this card, and it wasn't this Phyrexian one, but like look at the price on it. I was like, yes, the pay dirt. So what one did we get? I think I got this one in a Kaldheim pack. It's still $50. It's quite good. It's a legendary Praetor. Now, is this a green card? Like, this is, remember, folks, the rule. And I got to let me get serious here. Brody's going to talk seriously with you here for a second. There's a rule that says this card is not good. All right? Okay, this card is good, and I'll tell you why. For 6 mana, when the card comes into play, it should do something for you immediately. If you're paying 6 or more mana for a card, it should do something the turn it comes into play, and it should continue to give you some value that wins you the game. And I think this card actually does meet that criteria. There's a lot of 6 mana spells out there that don't do anything until it comes around to your next turn. So that's why this card is good, because you get a 6/6 with haste. So it can come into play, and it can do 6 damage right off the bat, and it's also got trample, and then it's got this extra ability on it that says if you would put one or more counters on a permanent player, you put twice that many counters on it instead. If an opponent would put one or more counters on a permanent player, they put half that many counters on a permanent instead. So this card, for 6 mana, anytime you guys are playing Magic the Gathering, you're considering to put a card into your deck, and it costs 6 mana, that is the tell of the tale, the tail of the tape for a card, whether it's good or not. I'll give you an example. Here's a card, Carnage Tyrant. This is why this card did not see legs. when it was in standard. This card didn't stick around for very long after it rotated out. In fact, the price of this card was quite high. It's also 6 mana. It's got the exact same mana cost. So why is Vorinclex sticking around in price and actually being quite playable and quite good? Well, it's because the fact that it actually does something the turn it comes into play. So this Carnage Tyrant is as much as $30. It was roughly around Vorinclex pricing when it was in print and in play. So like for 6 mana, what do you get? You get a 7/6 can't be countered, trample hexproof. So with 6 mana, you tap out all your mana, you play the 7/6, and it just sits there for a whole turn and does nothing. So that's the measuring stick. If we're paying 6 mana, we want something that just wins us the game. If not, gets us close. Here's another example of a green card with the exact same mana cost, Primeval Titan. Primeval Titan. All right. Here's another card, 6 mana. It just so happens these are all the same mana cost. This is 2 green and 4 for all of these. And this is why Primeval Titan is good. Brody, I remember you and Mrs. Brody Alfonso casting this against me in Standard. The Carnage Tyrant, I know. And that was about the time that I learned, I think it was Alex. It was you remember Alex from actually at your wedding, right? It was Alex who said that. He said Carnage Tyrant isn't good, Brody. You can't be playing it. It's not good. And I'm like, why, Alex? It was Alex who told me this rule. He's like, for 6 mana, it's got to do something the turn it comes into play. Primeval Titan is good. It's 6 mana. It's got trample. And when it enters the battlefield, you get to search for lands. And when it attacks, you get to do that too. And then it sticks around and you get something for it. You get the 6/6 body and something on top of that. And then you get to sit around and make a turn go around and then attack and get more lands. But this is like the measure of 6 mana. For 6 mana, it should do something. And that's what Alex told me. And I've committed that to memory. And I take that with me every single time I'm building decks and trying to brew new brews. It's something that I consider. Is it 6 mana? Okay, that's the threshold. If it's 6 mana, I want it to do something. At least Vorinclex can attack with haste and deal 6 damage. And if you're going to be able to proliferate on that very turn or put some counters on stuff, then at least Vorinclex will get that done for you on the turn he comes into play. So that's a good measure of a magic card at the 6 mana slot to see if it's worth playing. The Carnage Tyrant, that's why I was talked out of Carnage Tyrant. I thought it was good until it was explained to me that way, and then I'm like, you know what? I cast a bunch of Carnage Tyrants. And you know what? Now where's Carnage Tyrant? It's in the dumps. I think I might have vendored one of them for $25. I probably did okay doing that. Get out of here. Because once it rotates out of standard, there's not going to be a home for it. And the Demonic Tutor. Interesting. Cards, moving, shaking. Oh, we got some tools. A couple of tools. I got another article for you folks here. Let's just bump back here for a second here. I want to thank all of you folks for sticking with me over the couple of years doing this show. It's been great, and I'm going to keep doing it as long as you keep tuning in. I got another article here for you folks. I just want to take a look here to see if I can find it. What do we got here? Speaking of prices of Magic cards, what do we got? We got this one here. The top 10 most expensive Fallout cards. What is moving and shaking in the world of Fallout? The new Magic the Gathering set. It's got some extremely powerful mechanics in it, bringing back the energy mechanic. Who thought I would never have predicted that? I mean, I predicted the return of Garruk, or Garruk, however you want to say it. I said it to Dustin. I said, Dustin, Garruk is coming back. And he said, Brody, you're crazy. He's never coming back. Him and Liliana got into a bit of a domestic. And since then, he's been on the bench and he won't be back. And Garruk did make a comeback. And if I could say there was one thing that was never going to come back, it's energy. And now it's back. So I couldn't have even seen that coming. We got your back. The top 10 most expensive Fallout Magic the Gathering cards. Okay, after months of speculation and steady growing hype, the Magic the Gathering Fallout Commander decks are almost here, launching on the 8th of March. That's today. These Commander decks march today. These 4 pre-constructed decks will contain a plethora of awesome and flavored cards boasting beloved references and powerful new abilities. Surprisingly, there's high demand for many of these cards already, and while Magic Fallout decks may not be out yet, there's set cards that are already seriously expensive. With pre-orders being placed left and right, the center, there's growing demand for multiple soon-to-be staples. Thanks to this, You may well be tempted to pull apart your deck and sell its best bits for scraps. Regardless of whether you're playing the markets or financing your upgrades, the follow commander decks are undeniably lucrative. That much. See, I looked at buying them on pre-order. They were $300, and I was like, I don't know. I'll think about the bundles instead. But as much as many of the new follow cards may be expensive, currently the prices aren't exactly guaranteed since there's still going to be a pre-sale period and there's a lot more flux in that market than usual. Thanks to this, cards may jump around on this list for quite a bit after the following days and weeks, especially once the set launches. So this pricing quirk in mind, there's no sense waiting around and making you folks wait any longer when we discuss these cards. The Rose Cutthroat Raider. Yes, 4 manas. What do we get? We get a first strike 3/2 with Raid at the end of combat on your turn. If your opponent attacked this turn, create a junk token for each opponent you attacked. And then whenever you sacrifice a junk, add red. Holy smokes, we're more red wrap. Yeah, Dustin, I'm with you. The price shenanigans are hella suspicious. Fallout has had a huge print run shortage. Prices will go down with the second run. Brody needs to travel south of the Turdo Wall and do a live show with all of us here. I do. I need to do something. All right. Next up, while they may not be the cheapest red creature, the Rose Cutthroat puts the serious work to justify their cost. Not only can this robot create up to 4 junk tokens through combat, but they also massive upgrading them. Providing red mana for each junk token cracked, the Rose Cutthroat Raider essentially turns each one of those into a mono red treasure. Well, it's like the crime novelist with that one. Whenever you sacrifice an artifact, add red. So now when you sacrifice a junk token with the Cutthroat Raider, you get 2 red. If you have the crime novelist, that seems busted. It's only a matter of time before the red players start abusing that mana. Holy smokes, considering junk tokens are already incredibly useful, they provide an impulse draw, and this makes them expensive and makes them insane, so much so that Rose is practically an auto-include in any junk-based decks. Should the mechanic ever return in the future, Rose's price could soar. For that time being, there's a little while at the bottom of this list, and they're nonetheless rather expensive. Silver Shroud Costume. Equipment, 2 mana. Flash. When a costume enters the battlefield, attach it to a creature you control. That creature gains Shroud until end of turn. A creature can't block. So you can get some Shroud on your cloud here for 2 mana at instant speed. Chandra's Trunk. Don't play Magic on an empty stomach. Don't stream on an empty stomach. All right, hailing from the Scrappy Survivors deck, the Shroud costume kicks off the theme. It's like a Swiftfoot boots, I guess, at instant speed with Flash. It's maybe like some Swiftfoot boots, or maybe the Lightning Greaves. This one's even faster. It gives yourself some Shroud until end of turn. And Nuclear Fallout is an X card. What's this one do? Each creature gets twice -X until end of turn, and each player gets X rad counters. All right. Twice -X. A good way to deal with some pesky indestructible creatures. And inventory management. Split second. For each aura and enchantment you control, you may attach it to a creature you control. Oh my goodness. So this is going to be in Voltron decks everywhere. You get to put this on the stack at split second and then just like move everything from one creature to another. Holy smokes, this is going to get powerful in a Azure the Enchanter deck. Well, everyone will have their own picks. The inventory management is definitely one that my personal favorite cards, playing into the set's fantastic flavor. And inventory management lets you move around your auras and equipment. Thankfully, this effect is practically untouchable since it's got split second, being a very powerful mechanic. And beyond the truly terrific flavor, inventory management is just another incredibly powerful card, and regardless of what you need to damage protection, this offers a little bit of your opponent's helpless. Thanks to utility, inventory management is easy and auto-include with any Boros equipment-based deck. And commander options will move the focus around from this color pairing, and prices will likely remain that way. 3 Dog, Galaxy News. Trey's Dog. Hexproof is superior to Shroud. I wonder if Chess Grandmaster could use their skills on a Magic game board. Is there a term for a Magic player of the highest level? Well, I'll tell you, there's a term for a low-rate Magic player. We call them a third-rate duelist. I think the best you could say is a first-rate duelist, Michael. If you want to get under somebody's skin, call them a fourth-rate duelist or a fifth-rate duelist, or you can just say there's no first-rate duelist play. But I say a first-rate duelist. What's 3 Dog say? Galaxy News DJ. All right. 1-5. One day I'll be a first-rate duelist. Whenever you attack, you may pay 2 and sacrifice an aura attached to 3 dog. Galaxy News DJ, when you sacrifice an aura this way, for each other attacking creature you control, create a token that's a copy of an aura attached to that creature. It's a bard. This guy's singing? I guess he's a DJ, so he might as well be barding. Bombarding the stream. Cards to keep a look at. And the most expensive here's what one of the cards have been rated as one of the most impressive and most powerful cards of the set is the Nuka-Cola vending machine. This card makes food. It's 3 mana, tap it, pay 1, tap it, create a food token, and whenever you sacrifice a food, you get a treasure token. So this is something I would want to play for a little bit of fun in my modern food deck with Emery and Asmokal the Kardakar and the Underworld Cookbook. It's a 3-dog out. Right? Arguably the strongest card in the entire Fallout set is the Nuka-Cola vending machine. It's really no surprise that the vending machine is expensive, and when you're building a food type deck, tribal, or commander, this card is an instant disgusting upgrade. Not only can it create food itself, but it replaces the cracked food with treasure, and just beyond being good on its own, the vending machine gets even better with alongside commander staples like Academy Manufacturer and Amulet of Vigor, which makes your tokens come into play untapped. Strong back. Ciao, ciao. Here's another card. This is $10 for this enchantment already. Strong back. Equip creatures. Equip abilities you activate that target enchanted creature costs 3 less to cast. All right. There it is. I used to kill 3-dog, then you still hear his broadcasts. There it is. He's a post-apocalyptic pirate DJ. 3-dog rocks. I'm not familiar with all the characters in the Fallout, so I'm just learning here along with you folks as much as anything else. So it's and you're listening to Galaxy News Radio. I'm going to have to check this out. Formerly Michael Superbacker, I shall be known as MSMP. Michael Superbacker, pro Magic player. Okay, check this out. While Boros is the most popular color pairing for auras and equipment decks, there's still some loving designs for Selesnya. Considering the strength of Strongback, this variant of the archetype may be about to change some more and more popular. If you want to build a massive creature in an instant, Strongback is definitely the card for you. This card, it's 3 mana, so it's a green and 2, and equip abilities, you activate the target enchanted creature costs 3 less. So you get to put your equipment on there for cheap. Aura spells you cast that target the enchanted creature costs 3 less, and then you get to get +2/+2 for each aura and equipment on the creature, and it also counts itself. So this card makes the creature +2/+2, and then it gives you a rebate on all those other abilities. It could only be better if it had flash on it. Wouldn't that be nice? So the Boros deck and the Go Tall, the Voltron decks are going to want to play this. Urzur the Enchanter decks, and there's even a mono white card that lets you search your your library for an enchantment card and put it onto the battlefield equipped to a creature instantly. Who's this Preston Garvey, the Minuteman? Oh my, don't be a Minuteman. This guy's a 2-pump chump. So Minuteman? Okay, at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a green aura enchantment token. Really, we're getting aura tokens now, named Settlement, attached to up to 1 target land you control. This enchanted land has tap at 1 mana of any color. I think Benson was mentioning this. Settlements are back. When Preston Garvey Minuteman attacks, untap each enchanted permanent you control. Holy smoke. So this is a Naya card. White, red, and green. This seems like it would go really well in a lands deck. So you get to untap your lands. Maybe this goes well with Winter Orb, right? Hot Dice, this is a card that goes great with Winter Orb. Tap and mana to any color, and whenever he attacks, you untap each enchanted permanent. So another way to untap your lands, get you a little bit more value. It's going to be one of the most expensive cards in the set. These are pre-order prices from this new set, the Fallout set. The Grim Reaper Spirit. What's this one say? It's an enchantment for red and 4. The spell costs 3 less to cast if a creature died this turn. Enchanted creature, when Reaper Spirit enters the battlefield and tap each creature you control. If it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this one. Enchanted creature gets 2/2 and haste. I love it. Thanks for the snakes. Hiss, boo. I like taking extra attack steps. I don't know about you, but cards like the Combat Celebrant and even this one, the Grim Reaper Spirit, I think there's not Morag, the Fury of a Comb. There's a few Minotaurs out there. I think it's going to be a little bit of a long tell to see if we're going to get a viable multiple attack step deck. But this one here is going to be one of the most expensive. And then this is the $13.69 for the Pip-Boy 3000. Last but not least, The Pip-Boy 3000 sits at the top of this list and claims the crown is the most expensive Fallout card so far. When looking at this card, it's entirely unsurprisingly that it has claimed this title thanks to its fantastic utility, potential offering of a card draw, and +1/+1 counters or extra mana. The Pip-Boy 3000 does it all. So you get 1 mana. When a crypt creature attacks, you choose 1. You get to draw a card, then discard a card. You get to loot, or you get to pick a perk and put a 1/1 counter on the creature, or untap up to 2 target land. Well, that seems okay too. Not. You're bad man, Brody. You're bad man. Right? I'm bad. We got a little bit the Brody Ali stream. I'm a bad man here. I'm tracking the prices of Magic cards. I'm having a little bit of fun here with you folks this morning on a Friday. I want to thank you all for tuning in. This has been another fantastic edition of the morning show where we talk Magic the Gathering prices, finance, card interactions, the most expensive cards from the new sets, and the most expensive cards from the old sets. Mixing a little bit of the old with the new, and joining me and joining you. It's going to be a good day. It's Friday. The sun is out. It's going to be fantastic because we've got Friday Night Magic to go to, and if you can't bring a friend to Magic tonight, bring a friend to Brody's. This is the weekend here. It's Yabba Dabba Doo Day. Friday. Can't wait for it. And I got some bad news for you. Tomorrow will be a Saturday. Sadder than today. Let's get some sweet outro going here, folks. I want to thank you all for having my back. Coach Dustin Cullahall, Mr. Micro Super Backer, Mr. Benson, the Dual Brain. All you folks for tuning in. It's been a good one. It's been an amazing stream, an amazing week. May the sun be on your face and the wind at your back, and may every pack be hot whenever you may crack. This is Brody Alfonso bringing you some Magic the Gathering morning show, news, finance, and helping you get some fun into your collection. Remember, trigger on the stack. Just say it with me, folks. Trigger on the stack. We'll be back